Hello, I'm Thomas. I'm software engineer at GitLab, and I'm going to show you the result of a spike. I was thinking about how could we implement CLI for agentic chat in the shortest amount of time. And this is the result. So the goal of what we will do with the CLI is to create CLI that will use the workflow service, the current AI gateway, a backend, and provide the agentic chat web view feature parity, which means that the sole focus will be on running agentic chat and being able to run tools, get the agentic chat to change something from CLI. The MVC will be in a low, it will be in a spirit of low level of shame. Now we say low level of shame for dog fooding, which means that I would imagine that we'll get it working, but in a way that's probably not presentable to customers. But I want you to keep this in mind. When I'm discussing the MVC in this spike, I'm trying to get the agentic chat working as fast as possible. Anything that's not on the shortest path to having agentic chat in CLI is out of scope for MVC, including authentication and most of the other things that I'll show you in a second. So non-goals here are bringing in any features that are not in the agentic chat web view at the moment, or re-implementing tools, agents. It's just going to do what agentic chat does right now. We will keep these two guiding principles, and that's we will share the non-UI logic with agentic chat web view. That means that we will use the runner, the executor, and all the tools that we have at the moment, rather than re-implementing them. The second guiding principle is that we will focus only on the agentic chat feature, as I said, and we'll keep the infrastructure thin. So I'll explain what these two mean. Sharing all non-UI logic with agentic chat web view means that we will, any changes, any improvements that we will make to the backend for CLI will be shared with the web view and vice versa. If a new change to agentic chat doesn't require UI change, for example, we will change how we ignore files or something like that, that change is going to be shared between CLI and agentic chat, and the experience will be consistent. There is a few drawbacks or considerations. We will have to, we will be restricted by the current architecture compared to Greenfield project, and the interaction will be slower, at least initially, than if we had a thick client. All the agent logic would be implemented in the CLI, as most of the other CLIs do it, and we would just use the backend like AI gateway as a gateway through for the Anthropic model or any other model. And the second guiding principle is keeping infrastructure thin. There is going to be a lot of architectural differences between how CLI and a language server works. From startup, authentication, logging, editing, it's all described here. And the two ways how I saw this, how I saw the CLI being implemented is either kind of trying to make the CLI another client for the language server. That means that we would be able to reuse almost all of the logic, or only create abstractions that provide the bare minimum functionality to get the agentic chat working, and then spend time making these abstractions work together with language server later. And I'm advocating here for the second option, because I believe that the first option, where we would reuse as much of the current language server as possible from the get-go, would result in poor performance, especially startup, where when you are starting your IDE, you usually don't mind that the IDE is starting for 10 seconds. In CLI, you want instant or near instantaneous startup. And there is a lot of complexity that is present in the infrastructure that would be really nice to think about and make the code fit both use cases. But if we would just if we would not, like, how to put it, if we will just reuse all the existing code and kind of figure out small workarounds here and there to make it work as a bulk, then we won't have motivation, or like it's going to be too complex to go back and start refactoring compared to starting small and making incremental changes. So the examples of this are, instead of using full repository service, we'll figure out what part of repository service does the CLI need, which is find files and get me remotes, and we will create abstraction for that, only implement that, and then later come back and make the language server abstractions work together with CLI. Similar with configuration. Cool. So, important thing, MVC scope. What's going to be delivered as the part of the MVC? And again, bear in mind that this is not necessarily customer facing. This is just the shortest path to make the agentic chat work in a CLI. The authentication is going to be done with environment variables. We will only use default namespace. Right now, we try to get the project and namespace from Git remote, and if that fails, we use the default namespace. The CLI at the beginning will only use the default namespace, so the chat works with not necessarily reporting the right project. Distribution is going to be done through NPM. Logging stored in temporary file. UI is going to be only interactive. That's important. The backend will need to have some modifications before it will support non-interactive mode, like the -p in Cloud Code. And telemetry, we will keep the minimum telemetry. That's like 10 lines of code at the moment in the workflow. We'll keep that, but it could be outscoped. It's not 100% necessary. There is a bunch of implementation details that you can check yourself, and then what I would imagine is going to be the fast follow-up for the MVC is showing diff. At the moment, the Duo diff feature is implemented in the IDEs, and we definitely want to show what's being changed as a part of the session, but it's not in the MVC because it's not strictly necessary. It's going to be new feature in the CLI instead of just bringing feature parity, and so I suggest it as a fast follow-up, but I don't think that it's going to be presentable without it, but it is not going to be one of the first things we implement. And diagnostics, because I would imagine that the Duo CLI will provide a command where you run it and it will tell you what's wrong, rather than us using the feature check mechanism, or at least not in the form that it is in currently, where you change configuration and then the change bubbles through the feature state chain, and then you get back a language server notification saying whether you have a valid state or not. I would imagine that this is going to be much more point in time. I run a command, is everything okay right now? And then the features beyond the fast follow-up is a binary distribution of the CLI, another distribution through package managers, personal access token and auth authentication, proper GitLab project selection and passing, non-interactive mode, which will need backend changes, ability to suggest different edits. Again, that's going to be like, this is not CLI specific. It's just something that might be expected from a CLI, but we will have to implement it for both WebView and CLI. And logs will be stored somewhere and log rotated, and we will do research of the state-of-the-art CLIs that and figure out how are their features compatible with our architecture. And that's all I wanted to show you. Sorry for not having a flashy CLI proof of concept. I think that the Elvin's one that I linked is pretty much on par with what I was making, so I don't show any new UI. But this is what I wanted to show you. Thank you for the attention, and see you.